It was fall of 2018. My dad had called me 2 weeks prior to hunting season in Minnesota to go back home. I am originally from a small town in North Carolina. In 2014, I went to live with my sister and my brother-in-law Cha in Minnesota and used school as an excuse to start fresh in a new city. My parents were hesitant about my decision. Before I left, my dad had said to me, "Có những chuyện nhiều cần đó nè, giờ có muốn nhớ của tôi mà có những cỡ chỉ tàu thế có những chỉ tàu xe cỡ nè. Cái chuyện theo hậu lửa ô sư, một trong company in đồ chè có sát chè có thể bảo để cái khử trong đi chả nè. Có một hậu lửa company in đồ là chè có những mua xe một cần tàu sư là mà." Determined to prove my parents wrong this time, I set out to Minnesota to start out on a new journey. My sister and Cha were kind and did not want me to stress about work. They told me to focus mainly on finishing school. For the first semester, I was able to focus on my education until hunting season began. My brother-in-law invited me on a hunting weekend trip with him and his buddies, and after that, I started to slack off again. Hunting was fun and less stressful. I completed my first semester of school with barely passing grades. At this point, my parents continued to support me financially, such as my car payments, car insurance, phone, any necessity for me. My dad urged me to get a part-time job to cover my own expenses. My dad said to me, "Ô hơ lười, ba có tụ một thế, giờ y thể nông cày thế mà. Chỉ hai tia, có yếu nên nung nhỏ ấy, nó đỡ nâng cơ sư nà." Despite my dad's advice, I remained indecisive about life in school. I spent most of my times enjoying outdoor activities with my brother-in-law and nephews, while going to school part-time. 4 years later, and I did not achieve the goals I set in 2014. I wanted to be a changed man, but felt that going to school to obtain an education may not be the right path for me. I did not want to return home to North Carolina either. Every job I looked at felt like it was not a fit for me. That summer 2018, my dad called and advised that I return home, find a job, and start to save money for my future. He even suggested that I find a wife and start a family. My dad said he found a nice girl. Her name is Pania, and her dad works at the same company with my dad. Pania recently graduated from a 4-year nursing program and currently works as an ER nurse at a local hospital in our small town. I'll be honest, I was interested in this girl Pania. At the same time, I felt she was out of my league. I pretended to show no interest over the phone before I discontinued the call. Late fall of 2018 came along, and it was time to hunt again. For the last 4 years, we would go hunt squirrels and deer at Reno. I became very familiar with the game land at Reno. One evening, we had set out from our campsite to our stands. My brother-in-law had his stand close to mine, so we ventured into the woods together. We had reached my stand, and Cha had continued downhill toward his stand. I heard someone called my name from behind. Va. I couldn't make out which direction the voice came from. I looked downhill and noticed that Cha's back is facing me, which meant he never looked back to call me. I disregarded the voice as nothing and began to climb up the steps to my stand. I reached the support beam, which was only about 5 to 6 steps up. It was at this moment that I came face to face with a brown snake. I did not see the snake on my support beam until now. The snake is brown, scales almost as sparkly as gold. This was such a nerve-wracking encounter that the snake's look painted a vivid image in my memory. His body was curled along the support beam, but his head had happened to be in my direction. Afraid that he may bite me, I jumped off the steps immediately. I didn't realize the danger of my action until I felt my 2 feet on the ground. This was not a small snake, Judging from the look of his body, he was probably as huge as my wrist and as long as my arm length. The snake was just lying there on the beam. He didn't jump after to attack me either. I remembered right away that I have a Hmong knife in my backpack. I took out my knife and decided to cut off a tree branch to fend off the snake. I remember that the snake did not retaliate. I eventually killed the snake and tossed him downhill about 30 yards away from my stand. I came back to my stand and continued my hunt for the evening. Not even long after I sat down, I heard footsteps shuffling through the leaves and branches from ahead. The noise seemed to be coming in my direction. Excited to see what animal was approaching, I looked down to see nothing in the distance. I could still hear the mysterious footsteps as it approached closer and closer to me. At this moment, I felt my body hair stand on end as a cold chill ran down my spine. My physical reaction preceded my emotions. It reminded me of the old Hmong saying, "You look how much you to bleed to bone day le." Suddenly, a chilling cry followed by a child's scream echoed from a distance. After the scream, the woods stood silent. My heart pounding, I clutched my rifle as I scanned the underbrush for any sign of movement. My hunting stand was perched deep in the wilderness. It's a solitary outpost where I sought comfort and gain, but this cry, it defied explanation. There were no cabins and no private property nearby. Only the wind whispered secrets among the leaves. The sunset had begun to settle lower than the trees. The eerie stillness of the woods hung heavy in the air for a long time. And then suddenly I glimpsed movement, almost like a flicker of darkness at the edge of my vision. The shadow materialized out of nowhere, and a little girl with dark long hair in her haunting Hmong outfit walked out from the underbrush. It was hard to tell how old the child might be. It was her attire that sent a chill down my spine. The Hmong outfit clung to her small frame. The torn, lopsided purple turban adorned with a shijing upon her head. The white skirt with the blue top faded, and a black shade pinned to the front of her skirt. Her steps were unnatural, as if she were pulled by invisible strings. I held my breath as she glided right underneath my stand. Swallowing my own saliva was a sound too loud. I knew I wasn't delusional at this moment. I couldn't see her face clearly because of her long hair, and I prayed that she does not look up at me. And then I heard the tune of Cha whistling from a distance. His arrival meant safety. My heart felt a great relief until Cha's whistling ceased. I looked back down beneath my stand. The little girl in monk clothes had vanished. Panic began to claw at my chest. I peered downward, half expecting to see the child again, but the ground remained empty. She was out of sight. No trace of her, no rustling leaves, no fleeting shadow. I whistled back to get Cha's attention, my breath shaky. My whistle dissipated into the winds, yet no response from Cha. 20 minutes passed, and still no response, until suddenly the flashlight beam started to dance uphill, drawing closer to my stand. Cha's figure emerged, gasping for breath, eyes wide with fear. "Dalo!" he exclaimed, his Hmong words urgent. "Jojo!" His voice trembled, and I understood something was terribly wrong. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely audible at this time. Cha's eyes darted around, scanning the darkness. "这做什么？ I immediately came down from my stand and we hurriedly fled downhill toward camp. As we approached our campsite, most of our men were already back. Cha didn't speak a word to anyone and went straight into our tent. I sensed something was wrong, and that night Cha did not come out to eat dinner with us, so I decided to go into the tent to check on him.
이 차, 요 자로 걸어나, 저거 치러노 뭐.
Dalo, Sholio. Botana, Toku Jokalo Toko, Ojakolo Tundun Tuke, Yunje Loro Shoko, Chose, Jakutili Lopora, she's at Sundatia.
Eole colabora chino.
Shaw Gulotsa Hoku and the Cochona. Shotokumu Kutuchipora China, Ojatoku Jokaloe. Kuchilipo in a mojing Punakandong. Nimojing no tejo loli si teisu. The Shimachi mo I panemonto itunin jepo kai no ishano nemojing no tea. The Nankai to Kwa Yongtun Joe Yongtumon no dollar. Mikamin Joe to more than I know your dollars only had the nemojing the yonder don't they lay. Matzo Zon Chileo. A mojing sat out of Berino not in law.
Tu nemojing the only jama. Có bỏ lên đó chỉ có một con sứ mỏ.
Đó là nếu mà riêng đời trong này là một con nhá cho là bố nè. Là một con nhá cho là bố nếu chả mới lúc tao hậu thế rồi chả mới cho phổ trong số đồng nên đồng thế. Chỉ là mới ở đây này cô la sẽ xỉa cho là cô gì. Ôi nếu lúc cho đâu nên nà. Nếu chả mới thấy bao tia thế. Ở đây sẽ được đu thế hả. Mà chứ thế xỉa cơ liệu. Để xem mà cô bỏ lên nở ta chê. Cô giờ chê tia. Lo tư nhiều đâu tổ co sư họ, thằng đó chị cũng chấm mua kia của lông tài cho lo dễ đâu nên mua riêng nữa nè hả? Ôi cha nên mua riêng nữa rồi chỉ lấy chim lại tờ rồi. Ôi cha nên mua riêng nữa chỉ lấy cú chị lo tờ biết chi lấy vô. Thằng nó cũng trai chị cũng muốn cho lo tờ nó to cho nè. Chị nên mua riêng nữa tôi cũng nghe rồi ta rồi. Ôi cha tại xin đó chị mua ra chỉ chùa kia ít bông thế ít bông gì. Tờ cá kia tôi lo cũng tiền, đó chứ đâu kia cũng nè. Chị cũng thấy rồi chị cho nên bây giờ đi cho nhiều chừng đến đủ đây thế trong này tới ấy trong này lên tới nhiều khó khăn kia họ ắt tới lo xí nè thằng nó chị cũng trai chị cũng thấy là kia chỉ những lo đâu nó có gì tiền. After I heard this, my heart was heavy. That night I woke up to the sound of soft voices whispering by our fire pit. It also sounds like someone or something was digging through our food on the table. The voices sounded distant yet close by. I couldn't make out what they were saying. I woke up Cha just to find out he was not asleep either. He had woke up to the voices as well. I told my brother-in-law that I'm going to go outside to have a check. Cha tried to stop me, but I wouldn't stay. I unzipped the tent. I peeked outside in the dark. I don't know if I expected someone to be there or not, but I did not see anyone. The only thing alive was the flame from our fire pit. I stepped out of the tent with a flashlight in my hand, my breath visible in the cold air. The urge to relieve myself had pulled me away from my warm sleeping bag. But now standing at the edge of the woods, I felt a sudden unease. As I zipped up my pants, I heard it, the faint shuffle of movement. My flashlight swept across the clearing, illuminating the wooden bench where we set up our makeshift campsite. And there it was, the Mojing. Cha had described it to me earlier, a small straw doll with limbs twisted into intricate patterns. Folklore said that these dolls held ancient magic, that they were guardians of secrets and curses. But seeing one in person was an entirely different experience. The Majing perched on the bench, its eyes more pinpricks of darkness. Its straw hair hung loose, and its arms seemed to reach out, beckoning. But what chilled me to the bone was its resemblance to the little girl I glimpsed earlier, the one who had appeared beneath my stand. her eyes hauntingly empty. I stumbled backward, heart racing. I dashed into the tent and told Cha what I had just seen. Cha said, "Maybe you were just seeing things." To confirm that I was not delusional, the both of us came out of the tent to look again. The doll was not there anymore. It vanished as if it had the abilities to walk on its own. We immediately packed our belongings hastily, stuffing them into the car. Cha woke up his buddies, explaining that he felt unwell and needed to go home immediately. They exchanged puzzled glances but didn't question further. As we drove away, I could not shake the feeling that we stumbled upon something ancient, like a curse, a guardian, or perhaps a lost soul seeking to be released. When we returned home, I had forgotten all about the doll in the woods and did not tell my sister what Cha and I encountered. Cha felt ill after returning home, experiencing symptoms like vomiting and intense body pain and heat. He believes the haystack doll is seeking revenge. The Hmonglish seems to be haunting him, appearing in corners and rooms. However, others can't see her. Doctors could not explain his symptoms, and eventually Cha became worse. I, on the other hand, saw a beautiful young woman in my dreams every night. She came with seductive motive and behaviors and eventually seduced me into having an intimate night with her. In my dreams, she was so beautiful, I was not even afraid of her. She wore a beautiful Hmong outfit, and her hair was dark, long, and silky. Eventually, I started to miss this woman in my dream, and I became eager to meet her again every night. I should have known of the consequences that came with this kind of relationship. Each day I turned pale and thinner. The hair on my head started to fall off, leaving white spots around my head. My sister became very worried about Cha, so she went to seek help from a shaman. The shaman set a date and came to my sister's house to perform a oneng ritual. In her chants, I could tell the shaman was being very forceful with her words. After the shaman came down from the ritual chair, she told us what is going on with my brother-in-law. She said,
"Rồi có tụi chị tao một ô ly trà đó luôn rồi nè. Nếu một ô đó luôn chỉ một lúc chơi nhỏ rồi. Tụi nó mà yêu ít tụi siêu ủa. Luôn mất xa cho muốn đâu rong đổi khỏi chờ nè. Có tụi chị tao lọn cha. Thế là ô ly trà đó luôn rồi nè. Sẽ bộ một lên đó."
At this moment, I remembered what Cha told me in the woods from our hunting trip. He confessed to the shaman in front of my sister and his family. He told them about the haystack doll in Hmong clothes, and he told them he lit the haystack doll on fire. All his brothers yelled at him for his actions. The shaman then said,
"Mẹ tôi à, giờ có một bỏ tới khổng trong đây con mà có chỉ sốc có thế chỉ xong cảnh thôi có lộ chế đi à. Bây giờ có gì em muốn xài đá một bỏ chế xíu nữa. Có một con lỡ lại chế trong này có tròn cho lộ đâu lỡ. Thế có bố tủ siêu nó cho có một chế là nè. Bây giờ nó chỉ trong xì nữa mà. Lời rồi bỏ tới trong này nó chế dùng giá để dùng một ít xa xứ."
My sister asked what they should do next. The shaman advised another ritual to send off this evil spirit or entity. The shaman said they will have to make or find another Hmonglish so she can send it off inside the doll. My parents were also informed of my situation. My dad called me concerned, and I told him everything I had seen on that day in the woods. Since my dad is a shaman, he went ahead and performed a oneng ritual to look into my case. My dad told me that the snake on my stand was one of our ancestors. It came to warn me of the danger I would encounter that day if I didn't leave. However, I didn't heed our ancestors' warning and instead killed the snake. As a consequence, I lost protection from our ancestor, allowing the Hmonglish or spirit inside the doll to attach itself to me. Concerned, my dad insisted that I return home, where my parents could perform an actual 원닝 자이다 for me. After witnessing what happened to Cha, I didn't argue with my dad and flew back home to North Carolina. After my return, my dad performed the separation 원닝 ritual and gave me a new name. Following this transformation, I chose not to revisit Minnesota. The beautiful Hmong girl ceased appearing in my dreams, and my hair began to grow on my head. The yearning I felt for her also dissipated. As for Cha, he improved after his shaman banished another Mojang along with the spirit within it. Since then, Cha abandoned hunting and never returned to Reno, a place popular among our Hmong community. It's remarkable how unexpected twists can alter our path. I had since then married Pania to be my wife. To my surprise, Pania did not judge me based on my educational background. Instead, she became my ground and motivation to do better in life. I never went back to school because it's not the right path for me, but I do hold a decent paying job now, and I continued to work hard for my family. Ever since then, I haven't revisited Minnesota. My dad gave me a warning not to return there, in case the haystack doll's spirit awaits me.